Nah, I'm not ready yet. Fine. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys stopping by very much. So I did go back in time. We do have a rest day going on in the candidates tournament. So I went ahead and grabbed a Wesley versus Jorden Van Foreest. Taken out of the Aimchess U.S. Rapid. Played last year. So it's a pretty recent game. It's pretty nice. But for all of my people that are coming from the Philippines, as always, I would say mabuhay. It is 7:33 a.m. So, magandang umaga. Kamusta na aking magkaibigan? Masaya ako makita kay muli. I appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat, aking magkaibigan. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from the Netherlands or who does speak Dutch, I will say hello. Welcome. Thank you for coming by and taking a look at my video. I appreciate it very much. But if you guys are ready to roll, let's take a look and see what we have for this game, man. Let's see. We got D4. Knight comes to F6. C4. E6. Knight comes to C3. And then we do have Bishop to B4. So as you guys know, we do have the Nimzo Indian defense. The most famous chess opening. No, I'm playing. It's not the most. I mean, it's up there. I mean, it's well known. When people start playing chess, they know like Najdorfs and Nimzos and, you know, like King's Gambits and all that, King's Indian, things like that. And so we do see Queen coming to C2. You know, that is a very common move, but we do, the highest move we're going to see in this position is going to be E3. You're just making sure that we have a solid structure. But Queen to C2 is like a very close second behind that. We do see castles by black. We got the move E4. We see D5. You know, look at White's pawn center, man. You cannot just allow White to just do this to you. You got to do something to combat it, man. D5 is going to be one of the few moves you can actually play in this position that are legitimate. You could try E5, you could try C5, but both of those do possibly allow the push of D5. So you got to be careful. So D5 does come. We see E5, you know, knocking this knight. But as you guys know, this knight is pinned on C3. So knight to E4 just makes it even that much worse. We do see bishop to D3. We got C5. Did I not do? Okay, I got it. Okay. We got the move C5. Just continuing to try to break down the structure. We got knight to F3. Preparing to meet pawn takes D4 and knight takes D4, which is what we see in the game. Knight comes to D7. You know, we're tickling this pawn. As of right now, like that pawn is like basically completely undefended. So we're trying to say, hey man, let's get some nom-noms rolling. So we do see bishop to F4, one way to, you know, protect that pawn. We do see queen down to H4 because this bishop at the moment is undefended. And then if we can remove some pieces out of the way like this knight is actually undefended as well. So, you know, there's kind of a lot of tactics that go on in this position right here. So you got to be a little careful. So we do see G3 attacking the queen. Queen goes back to H5, and we do see castles by white. And we see the hyper aggressive, which is actually absolutely the best move in the position, G5. It looks a little bit strange because you're like, dude, you're just like flinging this pawn forward that's in front of your king. But white is not in a like very like promising attacking position at the moment. You know, their pieces are kind of hanging out on this side of the board. So they're not really, you know, aimed to attack. You know, this bishop attacking this square is not valid because this queen is hanging out over here. So, you know, the queen's kind of doing like a G-pawn's job. So we do see pawn takes D5, bishop takes C3, pawn takes C3, and we got pawn taking F4. And I mean, this is a very dicey position. You definitely, absolutely do not want the pawn to come down to F3 because then his queen can come down here. You know, of course, you have to get this knight out of the way because it's protecting that at the moment. But I mean, you know, you got some light square weaknesses a little bit. So we do see pawn taking E6, knight takes E5. We do see bishop taking E4, bishop taking E6. And then we do see the move rook F to E1. And you have plenty of coverage on this square. So you are not worried about the ever so dangerous looking knight to F3 with check. The king sidesteps over to H8. And this is actually the novelty of the game. I believe it's a novelty just simply because bishop takes B7 is a move. And it is on the board. You basically just gave away a pawn for nothing. So king to h8 just really isn't a move in this position, and that's why you see it being a novelty. It's much better to move one of the rooks out of the way, you know, and at least like do a little bit of counterattacking. But you know, like I said, king to h8, we see bishop taking b7, and then the rook a comes to b8. So you have gotten you not only a pawn, but you have placed the tempo on that rook on a8. So we do see bishop coming back to g2. And this bishop is actually like a really great piece because, you know, if it's not for this bishop, you know, if we move this bishop off the board or something somewhere, which I don't think I can even do. It's not letting me do it. Anyway, that's the best I can do. As you can see, you have a lot of light square weaknesses going on around your king. So, you know, this bishop is super crucial. So we do see pawn taking g3, pawn taking g3. We see bishop down to c4. Attacking something somewhere. I don't know, making this be a dangerous diagonal. But, I mean, the white king is actually super duper safe in this position. So, I mean, we're good. We do see queen over to a4. And then we do see the move f6. And backing up, when we did see bishop to c4, rook to e4 was a possibility. I mean, you could just move this rook over next move. And also, you are threatening rook to h4. And it's a little inconvenient because you really want to hold on to this square because, of course, that's checkmate. You know, if you can see what I'm talking about. And so queen to g6 doesn't quite work because of bishop to e4. And, I mean, you got to kind of creep up here to g7 or, you know, g8. And, I mean, you know, you're getting pushed around too much. So like I said, after we saw queen to a4, we saw f6. But this does allow us to remove the defender with rook takes e5. Pawn takes e5, and then queen takes c4. And you are up a pawn as white. And you are up a piece for the moment. Well, I mean, just for the moment, though. But we have reached a point in the game that if you don't want to pause the video and see what hyper accurate move Wesley So plays in this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, so I mean, I think that like a majority of you guys are sitting there thinking, like, is this a trick question? Like, is he tricking us somehow? Because like, bro, pawn takes d4, right? It has to be that because like you're down a piece as black, right? Well, the problem is pawn takes d4 completely just like loses the game on the spot. And it might be kind of hard to see, but I will show you in a minute. But what we'll do first is we'll get into what he played in the game. He actually played queen to g6. And there's about 2 or 3 moves that are like absolutely the best moves. And you really have to play them in the position. And queen to g6 is one of the best ones. But we played queen to g6. And then the knight is able to escape onto b3. But if we back up, after we see queen taking c4, let's just say, for example, it's like, hey, man, I don't believe you. I'm taking this knight because I like the knight. Pawn takes d4, right? You're like, man, I'm feeling good. I took the knight. You're down a piece. You see the bar. The bar is up like, bro, +6. We are going to be taking on d4 with the queen, and we're checking this king. The king has one move. King to g8. Like the king itself. Of course, you can block with other pieces to check, but the king can only go to g8. And now you have bishop to d5 with check. And slicing and dicing. The king has nowhere to go. So what do? I mean, do you take with the queen? That's a possibility. Do you move the rook in the way? That's another possibility. Do you go queen to f7? That's another possibility. They all suck. You do not want to do any of them. But the best possible is to go rook to f7. And then after the rook comes to f1, I mean, this is just hate chess right here. We don't want to get into that. We don't want to be Jorden Van Foreest in this position at all. So do not, absolutely not take the knight on d4. So like I said, we did see queen to g6. The knight escaped on to b3. Queen goes down to c2. We see bishop to e4. Just maximizing our pieces. We're not worried about this check right here on f2. Like, what's that? We don't care about all that, bro. We're just going to sidestep it. We're going to moonwalk like Michael Jackson, like, you know, because it's the thriller. So we see rook down to b6, and then we see the really super accurate queen to c7. And queen to c7 is a very beautiful move for a few reasons. Okay, it is a double attack. First of all, you are threatening checkmate on h7. which literally has to be parried some kind of way. But you are also threatening this pawn. There is only really one thing you can do in this position. I mean, there's a couple things you could do. You could go queen up to f7. Like, nothing that you do, though, is going to protect this pawn. So this pawn is gone. Now, the thing about it, when you're in these positions and stuff, you're thinking about it, you know, what to do. You know, you always in your positions, of course, want to look for an undefended piece, right? So if you're looking for an undefended piece, e5 comes to your mind immediately because that is the only undefended piece in the position. Other than this pawn, that's another undefended piece. So you're like looking at the undefended stuff. So that should give you like the first answer. And then you're thinking, hey, man, there's a checkmate over here, too, if I can go queen to c7. So anytime you can find a double attack, unless you're about to get mated in one, that is literally what you want to try to do every single time you're playing the game. Because that person is probably going to be in a bad position. So like I said, after queen went to c7, we saw rook over to h6. Queen took the e5 with check. Rook f came to f6. And then we saw bishop to g2. Now, of course, you know, like I said, you know, everything's all well and good. You're doing great unless you get checkmated. If you don't go bishop to g2, you're going to get checkmated on h2. So don't get checkmated. So let's defend that. We do see king over to g8. We got h3 because, you know, like, the checkmates are live, bro. So, like, don't get checkmated. Rook h comes to g6. We see rook over to g1. You know, we have some possible discoveries over here with this bishop, you know, tapping that, that check. We got king down to g7. We got knight up to c5. Queen goes up to f5. And it is not really beneficial for us to trade at this point in time. So the queen does come back to d4. We see queen down to f2. We got knight to e6 with check. And of course, this rook is pinned to the king, so it cannot move. So now the king goes back to h8, but the pin is still live. And we see the move knight to f4. And it is in this position that Jorden Van Foreest resigns the game. And you're resigning the game because of a few things. First of all, this queen is currently undefended. So, I mean, you have to kind of do something with it, right? The other unfortunate thing is this knight is also hit, and this knight would actually produce a check. So that's something that's actually very deadly as well. So, I mean, there is just a lot of stuff that you have going on. So the best possible thing to do in this position is to just like reduce all of the threats that are going on and go queen takes d4. But you are going to toss in a Zweisenzug move. Knight takes g6 with check, and then the rook will take, or even the pawn. It doesn't matter, either one. And then you got pawn taking d4. And as you can see, this is way too many pieces, bro. I mean, you got 4 pawns, a bishop, and a rook versus a rook. I mean, now you're going to be able to win the pawn, you know, like this, but I quit. Like, I'm not playing this, man. This ain't me. No, like I said at the beginning of the video, like, I'm not ready for that. No, we're not doing that. So that is that game. And so Malacca C. Wesley. So that was a nice one there. So all of my people in the Philippines, I would say maraming salamat aking kaibigan. Makito tayo mamaya. Anybody coming from the Netherlands, I will say thank you. And I'll see you guys next time.